Hi, everybody. Welcome to this panel on advocacy, both for yourself and for others. I'm Emily Lowe, the Director of Partnerships at She Sharp, and we hope you're just as excited as we are to talk into an interesting discussion about all the things most of us had to learn, probably the hard way, somewhat unfortunately. So hopefully all of you watching can walk away having some tips and tools to supercharge your career development and ways to feel more confident in yourself. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. At She Sharp, we're experimenting with making our events more inclusive. Today, we're using Wordly to offer automated translations in 16 different languages, as well as closed captioning. If you'd like to listen and/or read content, today's content in another language, please follow this webinar in YouTube. Then you open the Wordly link that is in the chat, which will open up a new window. There, you simply select the language, and you should be able to listen or read along in your preferred language. Great. So, for those of you who are not familiar with She Sharp, welcome. We hope this is the first of many events that you'll join us for. We're an organization based out of Amsterdam that fosters diversity and inclusion in technology and entrepreneurship, specifically aiming to provide underrepresented minorities with a safe space to explore their interest and potential. We always have something going on that's super exciting, and most of it happens on our website, shesharp.co. So please check it out. From there, you can sign up to our newly minted newsletter, which will keep you updated on all of our latest events and activities. If you sign up for the newsletter before May 21st, so that's about a week and a half from now, you'll be eligible to win one of our JetBrains licenses valued up to 150 euros. So please feel free to sign up for the newsletter and spread the word amongst all your friends and colleagues. You could also win that JetBrains license if you sign up. You can also find the application for our mentorship program on the website. We've had this mentorship program for a couple of years now. We're looking for both mentors and mentees. We'll actually speak a little bit about mentorship tonight, but as a mentor, it can be super rewarding to pass along your wisdom and experience. And as a mentee, having someone to coach you and guide you can make a crucial difference in your career development. Tonight, we're partnering with Elastic. We're proud to be partnering with them for the second time this year. And for those of, actually the third time, for those of you who don't know, you've probably used Elastic and you don't even know it. Their customers run the whole gamut from Pfizer, the one that, made the vaccine, and to Facebook, and even to the New York Times. It's a search company built on a free and open heritage so that everyone can get started on Elastic products quickly and frictionlessly. Elastic offers 3 solutions for enterprise search, observability, and security, all built on one technology stack that can be deployed from anywhere. From finding documents to monitoring infrastructure to hunting for threats, Elastic makes data usable in real time and at scale. Founded in 2012, Elastic is a distributed company across the globe, which you'll see from our panelists, none of whom are actually in the same place, including myself. So yeah, that's the mark of a post-pandemic or I guess during pandemic distributed company. So without further ado, let's introduce our panelists. We'll go around the proverbial room, say who we are, what you do, and what your favorite city in the world is.
All right, cool. So I'll kick us off. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Zhang, and I'm a developer advocate at Elastic. So when I met a developer advocate for the first time, I had no idea what he did. So I'll just explain it real quick. So developer advocates are developers themselves. So our job is to become an ally to our developer community and get them excited about building with the Elastic Stack. And we do this in a variety of ways. We create educational content about Elastic products. We speak at conferences and meetups, and we also answer developers' questions. And we have a lot of fun doing it. So I would have to say my favorite city in the world is Taipei. So I got to live there for 3 months doing some research out there. And the people, the night markets, and like the short drive away from seaside rock climbing is absolutely amazing. So I definitely recommend you check it out. So that's it for me.
Hey everybody, I'm Phoebe. I'm also on the community team at Elastic, and I am sort of Lisa's counterpart, one of Lisa's many counterparts, who works on the program side of community. So my title is Community Programs Associate, but what I do is I interact with developers through technical conferences, but I'm more on sort of the booth and event management side of things. And I also work with students and educators, helping to get Elastic into classrooms and getting students excited about utilizing Elastic and preparing them for going into the industry with our tools. And I think my favorite city, this is kind of corny, but my hometown of Seattle, Washington is one of my favorite cities in the world. It's perfectly placed between the ocean and the mountains, and it's just beautiful on a sunny day. But because it's rainy there pretty much 98% of the time, it tends to keep people not so much knowing about Seattle. So yeah, like we want to keep Seattle on the down low, but it's becoming much more popular now. But yeah, Seattle is awesome. Great book town, great coffee, great restaurants. Lots of fun to be had there.
Hi, my name is Ima Valls. I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Thanks everyone for joining. And thanks to SheSharp for organizing this. I'm a senior support engineer at Elastic, based out of Barcelona. My day-to-day job is helping customers be successful when using our products. On the side, I enjoy giving back to the technical community, and for that, I co-organize Barcelona Madrid meetups and the annual Software Crafters Barcelona conference. So I'm very much involved with my colleagues and community here. My favorite city in the world is probably New York. I never get bored there. So many things to do, theater, museums, all kind of events. For living, I would not live there. I prefer Amsterdam or my own city, Barcelona. But to visit, I like New York.
Hi, everyone. My name is Willy Sampaio. I also work at Elastic, just like my colleague Phoebe, on the community program side. I'm responsible for building relationship with the community, working on conferences and meetups, and also I'm responsible for a recognition program that we launched recently for the community to recognize and award the most engaged community members. I would say that my favorite city in the world is probably, this is also very corny, but I think it's São Paulo, Brazil, my hometown. I have a very love and hate relationship with São Paulo. São Paulo is very chaotic. Traffic is insane. It's violent, it's not really safe, but at the same time, it's such a fun and diverse and plural city with so like a great nightlife and amazing food. And also, I think I'm missing Brazil so much. So I think that's why I'm answering São Paulo.
Cool. Thanks everyone for sharing and welcome. First, let's just kick it off. What does self-advocacy mean to you? And why do you think it's important, especially in the workplace and in your career? Why don't you start us off, Lisa?
Sure. For me, self-advocacy is just being able to define what you want and making a compelling case about why you should get what you want. So self-advocacy doesn't mean that, you're acting entitled or being selfish or being cutthroat. It just means that you have a clear understanding of what value you bring to the table and asking for reciprocation in ways that would make a difference in how you're able to take care of yourself and how you feel at work. And I think self-advocacy is just important in every aspect of your life, not just in the workplace and your career, because nobody's going to know what you want unless you tell them, nor will anyone just go out of their way to give you what you want. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned thus far, I think, is to, just like throwing away this belief that if I do a good job, someone will notice and award me exactly the way I dreamed of and more. Because I think that way you are just giving away too much power and just putting unfair expectations on other people. So, self-advocacy is, giving yourself the power to define what you want and creating something that fits your vision and inviting other people to be a part of that.
For sure. Yeah, I think I totally agree as well. Something I always harken back to is, yeah, I found a job, the beginning of my career was in 2008, 2009. I don't know if that ages me, but anyway. And it was a tough time. It was a quote unquote global recession. It was a time in which, if you had a job, you couldn't be too picky as to exactly who was hiring and so forth. And I remember when I got a job, I was so grateful to have it that it just kind of passed me by as to the things you actually have to do in a workplace, such as getting promotions and getting raises. I just thought, okay, once I'm in a career and you do well in that career, you're just going to go forward, right? Like that's the natural progression of things. But obviously, I think we all know here, and I think a lot of people who are watching probably know that that's not, unfortunately, the case. So, as we've all realized that, being good at your job or being good at what you do isn't automatically going to get you to move you forward. Can any of you speak to your experiences on getting promotions? What was the most difficult learning, and how can self-advocacy help in this area specifically?
I can share something that recently happened to me. I did got promoted a few weeks ago, and I remember that I've been working at Elastic since September 2018, and I remember sharing that with my manager that my most difficulty was actually doing self-advocacy. Because just like Lisa said, I would just expect that people knew like what I was doing, and then I realized like, wait, I don't know what people are doing. Like I don't know their details of their job. Why would I expect them to know the details of my job? So if I don't communicate, then like how do I expect them to know? So I've been working. That was a big learning curve to me, and I was lucky to have a great support from a manager, because to me it was, and it's funny because in my personal life I'm very I do communication all the time, and I'm very open to share like how I feel and what I expect from people. But towards work, I was, for some reason, I would just assume that people knew what was going on. I would just assume that people would get like in details about like my work, but they're all like, we're all busy doing our own work. So if we don't communicate, like if we don't share, they are not going to know the details. And if they don't know, how do I expect to be awarded of something that people don't know? And it's funny because like I said in the beginning, I'm responsible for a recognition program. And although like we do have a lot of very like highly active community members, if they don't prove that they are engaging with the community, how are we going to reward them? So to me, it was very, very difficult to communicate, to stop assuming that people knew what I was doing, to stop like just, and also I had this feeling that like I didn't want to spam people with like a lot of emails and like sharing like, oh, this is what I'm working, but it's part of the job. So if I don't do that, they're not going to set up some time to chat with me and say like, hey, will you tell me about your work? Nobody's going to do that. So it has to be more proactive. It has to be like to come from me instead of and I think I was just passively waiting for people to ask me, and then I would answer, oh, so this is what I've been doing. And eventually when I was able to work on that, I did get the promotion. So to me, that was the biggest difficulty to work on.
Could you elaborate a little bit more, Uli, on exactly the things that you did do in order to get yourself to the point where you were comfortable?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I would just assume that people knew. So I would like share things only when we have team meetings. And then so it's like, oh, since we do have this meeting, I have like something to share. But then like my manager suggests me to schedule meetings to talk about the specific project that I was leading, and then use that time like to communicate like in deep with the team members and let them know what was going on and ask their opinions. To schedule, it was in the beginning was a weekly emails, and then I'm not sure if, can you all hear me? I don't know if my screen froze.
Yes,
You're okay.
we hear you.
Okay. In the beginning, while the project was still very new, I would do like a weekly email and then like share with people what was going on, like details, like the next steps. So this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm going to be working on the next couple of weeks. And then after like a couple months, I changed the cadence. Instead of once a week, doing once a month. But I was still always, I would be always communicating with them and sharing more on Slack channel. But basically it was just like letting my team members know what I was working on and what the next steps were and the expectations, for example, because it was a big project that I had more people involved. So setting clear expectations, like I expect you to do this, and I expect you to help me with that. So that also helped me with keeping everyone on the same page.
Thank you so much. Emma, I think you had also something to add here.
Yeah, for me, the most difficult maybe was accepting that sometimes it's not possible to get a promotion when you want it, but still act on it. I mean, sometimes you ask for a promotion, you truly believe you deserve it, but maybe the company has not enough promotions available at this time. There's not enough money, open positions to promote everyone. Maybe you did not make it to the top of the list. So what I usually do is I try to talk to my manager, understand the reason why I was not promoted. Even if I communicated, I thought I was ready to get a promotion, and try to explain. So if then I can work in a plan with my manager for next time there is an open position, there is a promotion, I might be more ready, so the company feels that I'm ready. Sometimes what I did is go for a lateral move. If I see there's no option, maybe in the short term where I am, it might delay me going up the ladder for a while, going for a lateral move, but I can gain new skills and it will make me a better candidate in the future for promotions. In my case, I like learning. Learning motivates me more. So that's also something I consider sometimes if a promotion is not working.
All very good points. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so I guess like we were talking as well, both Uli and Emma, you both touched upon, if somewhat lightly, on the idea of being in a position where you have control over your situation, where you're the one who's setting the tone for what you're putting out there as well as what you're receiving, right? However, one of the prerequisites, one would say, for being able to do this is a pretty high level of self-confidence. So Emma, for example, in your situation where someone's rejecting you, let's not use the word reject, but there's no promotion available for you specifically. For someone who doesn't have high self-confidence, that can be a problem because, you receive it as rejection. It's a personal, emotional thing, as opposed to the way that you approached it, where you were able to say, okay, logically, I understand why this can't happen. I'm going to do these moves instead. But so self-confidence is obviously very big component of self-advocacy. We all have our demons that we need to battle, and if we don't believe in ourselves, we might not really feel comfortable pushing for the things we want or that we feel like we deserve, and we might also give up, in the face of rejection or in the face of challenges. How would you deal with this? Imposter syndrome is basically what it is, and how do you improve your self-esteem to go for your goals? Lisa, why don't you go first?
Sure. I mean, when it comes to imposter syndrome, it doesn't matter if you are a recent college grad or a world-renowned expert at something. So you'll feel like an imposter at one point or the other. And I think the first thing to remember is that feeling like an imposter is just part of being human. And this isn't an alarm just going off telling you that there's danger there and you shouldn't go. It just gives you an opportunity to identify like what you need to do to feel more prepared, so you don't feel this like sense of impending doom. And when I was a college grad, I used to read like these articles and books about self-esteem. And I remember the common theme was to learn how to have a positive self-talk, like believe in yourself and write positive messages on Post-its and like stick them on your walls and mirror. Well, none of them worked for me. I just kept feeling this sinking feeling that I will never be enough. And just merely reciting positive affirmation wasn't enough for me to really change the way I felt about myself. And the only thing that made a difference for me is to keep creating opportunities where I prove to myself that I can do anything, and just doing this frequently throughout my life to reinforce that type of thinking. So essentially what I do is like I set this like outrageous goal and put myself in this like do or die situation and see what comes out of it. So I'll share my first attempt at doing this. It was so nerve-wracking. So I grew up in this Asian immigrant household where my only two career options were to become a doctor or like a chemical engineer or something. And my whole life, I've been like working towards that. And I just kept feeling this, like it just wasn't the right path for me. But then I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to do? Like, I don't know what else to do. And so I was getting my master's in reproductive neuroendocrinology. So I was like trying to decide whether to become like a doctor or like whatever. And I was sitting in a lab measuring thousands of gonads for hours and hours. And I thought, oh my God, like there's gotta be more to life. I need a career change. So I thought, okay, so if I had no fear, no limitations, what would I be doing? And for me, just instead of focusing on just one single molecule, an individual, I wanted to focus on healthcare system as a whole. And I thought, okay, so where's the best place to learn how to do this? And Affordable Care Act was rolling out at the time. And I'm like, duh, Washington, D.C. So I booked a one-way flight to D.C., no job, no connections, no place to stay. And on the second day, I spent the entire day at the Capitol thinking about why I moved there and what I wanted to accomplish. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could learn from the healthcare experts from around the world? And they tend to congregate in Congress. So this is the place to be. So I had like no political science background, no connections at the time. And I was from Colorado. So I thought, you know what? Maybe like this US senator from Colorado would know the way. So I called his office and they were like, you know what? He has constituent coffee hours every Wednesday. Why don't you come to that? Signed up. And the next day, the government shut down over Affordable Care Act. So I literally did everything from chasing after Hillary Clinton to interviewing every healthcare professional that I met along the way. And one of them suggested, hey, like, why don't you start by interning in Congress? And my first thought was, I have no connections whatsoever. Who's ever going to pick me? But then I'm like, you know what? I moved here. Might as well give it a shot. Applied, and a couple days later, I heard back from the same senator's office that I've been talking to. Started as an intern, and with no legislative background whatsoever, I was doing research for senior healthcare advisor at the U.S. Senate. So I think for me, like this fundamentally shifted in the way I viewed myself whenever I had self-doubt. And after that, I just kept creating opportunities. I'm like, you know what? I want to move to Spain and start something. No job, no connection. I don't even speak Spanish. One-way flight there, creating an organization there. And then, I want to get into tech. So I moved to Manhattan and then became a co-founder. And all of these things just slowly built up my self-esteem. It literally had nothing to do about just the way I talk to myself. It's just proving to myself that I could do things. So it's something that I absolutely recommend if you're looking to build your self-esteem. I'm not at all recommending that you quit your job today and just book a one-way flight somewhere. It's not for everybody. It's tough. But and even when you do this, just realize like you will experience imposter syndrome. I mean, even like yesterday, like I did an event and like I found myself thinking, oh, why did I say that? Or like, oh, I didn't know the answer to that question. But I found that the feelings of inadequacy or shame or whatnot, it just passes away quicker compared to how I used to be back in college. So yeah, that's all I have to share.
I think, Emma, you also had some tips.
Yeah, I've always suffered from insecurity. I think I'm a master on that. Sometimes even insane insecurity. I've been more than 20 years in tech and I survived, and I still feel I'm not as awesome as other people I see. I'm always looking up at others and seeing that this person is awesome, that person is awesome, I'm not. My self-esteem actually used to be pretty low before I joined Elastic, and sometimes it still is. I think Elastic helped me a bit here. But you had to keep working daily. So listening to friends and allies and really thinking in that I can do this. This really shows when I needed to ask for a promotion or a salary increase. If the management said there are better candidates or that it was not the right time, I found it difficult to insist because deep down inside, I agreed with them. And that's the bad thing, because you're not pushing back because you really believe, oh, they are right. They found out that you're not good. And that's not true. I think you first need to believe it yourself. And the thing that worked for me, the concrete thing that has been working for me this past year, my manager was an incredible manager. He was gathering all the things I was doing, and I started doing the same. I keep a list of the things I do. I have this document, a very simple document, where I input anything I do that it's not the main focus of my current job description. I wrote a blog, I collaborated in our public forums helping users, I organize a meetup, I prepare a team building activity, I volunteer for an NGO. Anything I do, I keep in that document. Just the past year, I have more than 30 things written in there, and it helps me remember that I'm doing things, that it's not, and this is also helping me if I need to negotiate an increase, salary, promotions. I have this list. So now I have objective facts for me that I'm very rational. This helps me like say, okay, remember you can use done this, and this. You've helped people with this, with that. For self-esteem, what I do is I keep a list of the feedback that people give me. So I did learn that from my previous jobs. We introduced the kudos cards to thank colleagues each time someone did something that was awesome. I love giving this encouraging feedback or thanking people in general. So that was awesome for me. That was great. It's something I really enjoy doing. We now have a similar mechanism in our HR portal at Elastic, so we can give feedback to people. The good thing about it is that I can keep the list of the feedback I received. And whenever I feel down, like, oh, I'm not worth it, I'm not doing right, just go through it and it lifts me up. Every message puts a bigger smile on my face, just seeing concrete things that I did to help people. So yeah, I do recommend if you haven't done that, because you'll see that you have a lot of good feedback from colleagues, from customers, from users, and that's really uplifting to read.
So I have something to share too, real quick. I never really had that problem. Back in Brazil, I studied in a good university. I was building my career, and I was doing fine, and I was very confident about my career path. And then when I moved to the US, that was in 2016. I remember I was like, okay, I have to start over. And my biggest challenge was, why would they hire someone that English is not even my first language? Why would they hire someone if they have already that many people already living there? Like I'm not that gifted. I don't have that many skills that like they would hire me instead of hiring someone that has English as their first language. And I would struggle with that, like with that self-questioning every day. And it turns out that at Elastic, I think when I was hired by Elastic, one of the I would say big qualities was exactly because I also speak Portuguese, because I manage the Latin community. So they were indeed looking for someone who could speak Portuguese. So that was something that I could never thought that it would be appreciated here. So we give ourselves not enough credit, and sometimes like we have things that we don't even know that other companies or other people are going to appreciate. So it's always worth trying, like put yourself there and then see how it goes.
For sure. Yeah, I think one of the things for me personally was as well, like something similar to what all of you are saying, is that sometimes you need that third party to sort of say, these are the things you're really good at, or didn't you know that you do these things, and you're like, well, those are just things I do. It is what it is. But it's easy to kind of skip that. And for me personally, it was a turning point when I found myself a mentor. It was kind of an accidental mentorship. It wasn't like, hey, do you want to be my mentor? And we made an agreement, signed on the dotted line. It wasn't anything like that, but it was kind of a relationship where we were both kind of getting something out of it, and it was essentially mentorship. So what do we think is the role of mentorship in advocacy, and how important is it? Phoebe, I think you had something to say about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was really fortunate. My career trajectory is a little wonky. I definitely career switched a few times. I was a preschool teacher, Montessori preschool teacher. I did admissions advising for a tech school. I did evangelism, and then eventually I jumped into software engineering and took a 6-month boot camp for full stack web development. And along that process, I developed relationships with other women that were doing what I was doing. So it kind of started in the Montessori program. When I was doing my Montessori training, there were these women that were passing down this history and knowledge of Montessori down to the younger women who were taking the training. And they really inspired me because they had a perspective on things that us new people coming into it just didn't have. And then as I progressed into the tech world, I was one of 3 women in a cohort of 27 men for my software engineering boot camp. And so I was really fortunate that class was taught by a woman. So it was really valuable having her as my role model. And then she was also one of my coworkers because I had worked for this tech school before I joined the program. So she sort of, like you were saying, Emily, kind of adopted me as a mentee, and I kind of adopted her as a mentor. And I just think that it's invaluable having that relationship. The opportunities that came through that friendship and her advice to me were just incredible. And also, the other women that I was going through the program with were really inspiring to me, and we kind of mentored each other through the process. And then I have recently tried to, give back a little bit more. I'm part of the Women Engineers and Society, and I mentor students at CU who are in graduate programs for engineering. And I can't mentor them on the specifics of what they're studying, but I can share with them kind of the experiences that I've had in the industry. And things like salary negotiation can be tricky. And Emma brought up a really great thing that somebody else commented on in the chat that I kind of wanted to highlight, which is that I call it a brag file. But keeping track of when people give you positive feedback is really, really valuable. The emails, like Slack messages, when somebody gives you good feedback after a presentation, screenshot it, throw it in your brag file. Anything that's formally written, yeah, absolutely put it in your brag file. And any kinds of links that you have, like if you did something, like you did a presentation or you talked at a meetup or you mentored other people and you have some way of, tracking that, throw it in your brag file, because those are the things that you're going to end up using actually as things that you did, action things that you did that you can directly apply to a new role, or when you're trying to negotiate a higher salary. So mentorship was really hugely important to me. I couldn't have gone through the program that I did without the help of the other women that were doing it with me, or the woman that was teaching the program. And they're really valuable relationships, not just, because, it sounds kind of opportunistic, but they're deep friendships that I would never want to, give up. Those relationships. We used to continually get together to this day. We have our, coding coffee chats where we talk about stuff and what we're working on. And we've all spread out to different companies now. So it's kind of cool because I get to hear about what they're doing, in their roles. And that kind of inspires me. And it's part of what kind of spurred me on in my education. So if my mentor was doing something that I thought was really cool, I would try it too. She would say things like, do a coding challenge every day. Like, just do one little coding challenge every single day. And so, do it for 100 days or something like that. So that was kind of how, I just got exposed to way more than I would have had I not had those mentors.
Yeah, I think a lot of the mentorship as well is like you were saying, Phoebe, and I think we've touched upon this a little bit before, is that it kind of opens up this idea that, even though we call it a brag file as an example, it's not actually bragging. And having someone validate that you're not bragging and that you're not being that person, quote unquote,
right,
who is always like, oh, this is what I did, this is what I did. It helps a lot because I think especially for people who, well, we're going back to the imposter syndrome, first of all, right? But then on second thought, there is a perception of people who are always speaking about themselves and it's not necessarily positive. And so that there's a fine line between being, having confidence in the things that you've done and then also kind of like, listing them literally anywhere and everywhere that you possibly can. There's a fine line between those things. So, but talking about a brag file and also about the, writing down all the feedback that you get. One of the things I always go back to is, when you're a good student, I think a lot of us in tech who are, relatively intelligent in our own ways, and sometimes we're always recognized almost immediately at school as being good, right? You get the grade, you have immediate validation. In the workplace, obviously, that's super different. It's a totally different game, and part of that is about being visible. So we've talked about this already, but how do you think about visibility, and what tips would you give to someone trying to attain greater visibility? I think, Emma, you had something to say about this.
Yeah, I think about visibility is, as we were talking, people knowing what you do. I've always thought that my work spoke for me, like many of us did. And there was no need to brag about it. I've been very lucky in my career, and I always had plenty of values around that took care of that for me, though it's not always the case for everyone. And I've tried to change that in the recent years. I need to speak up for myself, share what I do, what I'm passionate about. It's not always up to others to do that for me. I've been great at hiding myself. I love being invisible. So I would say, first, don't be like me. Do not actively hide yourself. If you don't like to actively seek visibility, like it happened with me, you can simply start by taking the opportunities that are presented to you. I was the one when a manager came to me and said, Emma, we need to present your project to our CIO in the monthly meeting. I would go and hide. I would even help others prepare the presentation and let them do that for me. And that was not good, because it was my own doing. I mean, I have to own that and really get out there. Even if you feel you're not the best candidate to do a talk or write a blog, anything, give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? To me, when I tried that, it surprised me that it really works out. That's where we were a little weird, but what started me in the path of not being invisible was my hair color. My hairdresser decided he saw me as a blonde person. I'm dark haired. So he said, I see you as a blonde. You should go blonde. I said, let's go blonde. And then we started putting other colors on top of that, every month changing colors. And I realized everyone in the company remembered me. I was not able to hide anymore. The old Ima would probably have said, no, I'm going to go in hiding. I'm just going to go back to my old hair. I don't want anyone to remember me. I'm just here in hiding. But I embraced it and I used it in my favor. Now everyone remembered the girl with the colors. The other thing I think helped me is that I was always struggled finding my voice. I didn't know how to present my accomplishments, how to share something. Did I have anything interesting to share? And I was on a vacation in San Francisco, like I think 4 years back, and I found an event organized by a US chapter called Write, Speak, Code. It was a one-day workshop for marginalized genders in tech. They focus on 3 areas, depending on what you prefer: writing, speaking at events, or contributing code to open source projects. They have mentors for each area that help you navigate it, from how to write your biography for a talk, or what conferences are out there, how to prepare a good talk proposal, what open source projects are the best to start contributing to, anything. I love the workshop that I attended. Although I didn't act on that immediately, I kept it in my pocket as a future tool. There were a lot of impressive women there that helped me think about visibility. So once I joined Elastic a few months later, I found my way to start sharing. And now I have a web page with my talks. I'm about to add a blog to it. So this in turn is actually helping me battle my imposter syndrome and improving my self-esteem. So it works very well. Even if you don't feel like sharing yourself, you can go for any other passions you have. In my case, I like organizing events. So finding speakers for a meetup, helping other people share their stories or their work, that is very rewarding also. And you don't have to self-advocate in that case, you can advocate for others, and you will gain visibility doing that. I love sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter about our speakers, so that works very well. So I would say go find what works for you, and then you'll gain visibility, but without realizing it. Yeah. And I will also say, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Try different things. You think you're not a good public speaker, try it. I tried, thanks to one of my managers at Elastic that said, you should try training. Said, I'm not going to be a good public speaker. Said, let's try it. I tried and it works. So I think you should go out there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic suggestion. Yeah, I think especially the part about helping others and also just making those connections, right? Even if it's internal, with your colleagues and just not necessarily at a talk like this per se, but just getting your name out there in any way possible so that more people can recognize it is super valuable. There are instances though where, when you want to be visible, there are instances in which you put yourself out there and unfortunately the credit is not given where it's due. Have you ever experienced a situation in which someone else took credit for your work, and how would you navigate that situation, or how did you navigate that situation? I think Uli, you had a story.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have a story to share. That was years and years ago, back in Brazil. And I would say that the best way to deal with that is to avoid that to happen. And to avoid that, I think, is if you own it. So if it's clear ownership, like, so this is the person, like the project is owned by Uli. So if it's clear to everyone, so it's not possible to someone else to take credit. But like I said in the beginning, I struggle with that a lot in the beginning of my career. Since always, I struggled a lot with sharing and communicating what I was working on. And because of that, it was not really clear to the other coworkers that I was responsible for that project specifically, and someone else took credit. And another unfortunate thing that happened back then is because the manager, my former manager, she was not really supportive. So I didn't even feel comfortable enough to going and talking to her and say like, hey, I don't think this is fair because of this, and that. So I just took it, and I was just very upset for months. So if that would happen again nowadays, again, the best way is to avoid that to happen. But if that's the case, talk to your manager, let them know so this is what's going on, and I think it's not fair that this person is taking credit, because, and then give the proof that you've been working on that if it was not that clear. So give them proof that you were working on that. And lastly, talk to the person. If there was like one specific person, talk to them like, hey, like I wanted to understand your perspective. And there's a core value at Elastic that we don't assume malice. So I don't think my colleague, she did that on purpose, just like to screw me over. I don't think that. I think maybe she thought that she was doing more than me. I don't know what went through her head. So nowadays, I think it's worth it to have a conversation with them to understand like what happened. Like I don't think we are on the same page about that, and work from there. But definitely do not what I did, which was like I remained in silence, and it was not good for me. It was not good for my career, and yeah, so I definitely do not recommend doing that.
Yeah, I think I've also had that happen to me as well. And I stewed on it for like many years. Like to this day, I think it literally happened 10 years ago. And I still remember like that one email, that one time. So yeah, that's also not great, right? To be bitter about it. We already talked about this as well, where I think Emma, you specifically just touched upon it, you know, when you are not in the room and advocating for others is important, but also having people advocate for you. Specifically, I think this is super important in the relationship between a manager and a report. Managers should, in theory, that's not always the case, be the first in line to advocate for the reports, but sometimes they're not ready to or equipped to and so forth. What advice would you give someone looking to manage up, and what would you say to do in order to get managers to advocate for them more fully?
Oh, I'll take that one. So I think one thing to remember is that, you know, if you advocate for other people, it's highly likely that they'll be advocating for you as well. And for me, the first thing that I do is to like see my manager as an ally and an advocate rather than someone that I just report to. And what you'll find is that, you know, many managers do want you to feel really happy and fulfilled and for you to perform really well. And they are curious about what they can do, but they don't quite know how to have that conversation with you. So it makes it easier when you bring it up first and create that space. So my approach would be, you know, become your manager's advocate first. So just really understand like what their goals are and how you can help them meet those goals. Then put some actions in place to show your manager that you're adding value to their initiatives. And this will really show your manager that you're invested in their success. And then share what your goals are, and just make sure you have a concise pitch or like an organized doc ready. And this should include a clear set of goals and a concrete plan with like timelines and milestones. And some of these goals should really align with what your manager is trying to accomplish. Then ask for feedback and advice on how you can reach them. So perhaps your manager knows someone in the department with, you know, similar initiatives, or she knows of an extra budget, or there's a meeting coming up that may help you push your agenda. And one key thing to remember is that, you know, your manager has so many things competing for attention. So you got to make this process as easy as possible. So like make sure you share your pitch deck or document with your manager, and schedule a follow-up meeting if you have to, or send a reminder. Just be in charge of anything administrative regarding your project. So when she's in a meeting, when you're not present, all she has to remember are your goals and where to find the doc that you shared with her. And you'll find that more you align your goals with your managers, the more you add value, and more likely the manager will remember to advocate for you. And I think that's the best advice I got a lot around that topic.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that's also one of the things as well that was a learning experience, at least for me personally, was because, yeah, when you come into your career, you understand a boss is a boss, right? Like they're an authority figure. And then the more you kind of go around, go up in a company, and I think especially in tech companies nowadays, the structure of manager and report is not the same as it used to be, where it used to be, okay, I'm again the boss and these are all my people. It's a relationship, like just like you're saying, and that one that needs to be fostered as well. We have a question from the audience. What do you think about anonymous versus direct feedback? Sometimes I feel like people are not 100% open with formal feedback via HR systems. And I guess this also goes in line with what we were just talking about in terms of managers as well. We get feedback from a lot of places, but I think, Emma, this one was directed at you.
Yeah, with regards to the system that we use at Elastic, the HR portal actually allows you to send anonymous feedback, to send the feedback only to the person you want to send it, only to the manager from that person also, so you can actually make sure that even if it's not an open feedback, it gets to the manager. So if you want to thank someone, I think that's a good way to do it. I use it for positive feedback, so I do not use the system to give other type of feedback, like things they could improve. For that, I think I would use more a one-on-one situation with the person, something like that. Those feedback systems, I usually use it for the positive, like kudos systems where you're saying, thanks for this, thanks for that, great job here, that was awesome. So usually this can be out in the open, usually works. If it's out in the open, it's no problem. But even if you want to do it privately, you can do it. At least in our system, you can do it privately if you want.
Makes sense. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is basically for the positive feedback, that's where we want to be super public, right? Where we want to be obviously for ourselves, self-advocate publicly, but also advocate for others. So let's move to the other side of the table, speaking of feedback and especially giving feedback. I think this especially applies to, actually all sorts of situations. We've spoken about promotions, we've spoken about getting raises and so forth, but beyond those usual suspects, in what other ways can we apply advocacy in our careers and workplaces, or even in life, I suppose? That's another one. I think, Phoebe, you had something to say about this one?
Sure, definitely. So one of the things that it depends on what kind of a company you work for. Fortunately, we happen to work for a company that has very progressive, sort of social and family-oriented policies. But a form of self-advocacy that you could utilize is also advocating for if you need to take time off, or if you need to flex your schedule. Maybe you have an elderly family member that you need to take care of, or you have small children, you're doing the virtual learning thing. If you need mental health support, being able to flex your schedule and being able to ask for that is really, really important. And that's just another way that you could, utilize self-advocacy, to create space for yourself. And then also too, I think, when it kind of circling back to the topic we were discussing with imposter syndrome, what Lisa was talking about in terms of just taking action, I think a part of self-advocacy is trying to challenge yourself to push through some of that imposter syndrome and to ask for things. So this ties directly back into mentorship as well. So if you are looking for a mentor, reaching out to people that maybe you don't necessarily know, maybe there's somebody that you admire within your industry and that you'd really like, to ask questions of, reach out to them on LinkedIn. Ask questions, just say, hey, I really admire your work and I would really love to know more about how you got to where you are. Those are simple ways that you can create, you utilize self-advocacy in your personal life, but also, developing other ways within your company. If your company doesn't have progressive policies about, adoption reimbursement or things like that, be that person who steps up and takes that on with your HR department and, advocates for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I think there was another discussion I had with a friend recently about how, self-advocacy is not only about, your own personal position and career, but also just like the company as a whole, right? So if you want to speak up about indeed getting recharge days, or, it's been a bit crazy during the pandemic to say the very least, and we're all sort of on the verge of burnout, essentially, and just being able to say, hey, I need time, or we all seem to need time, is super valuable. And I think that's that's a great tip, to just say, like, just say it. There's very little to be lost. The worst thing they can say is no. I think there's not as much, we'll say, stigma around voicing your opinion anymore, which is a great thing. But speaking of which, we have a question from the audience. Do you have any tips about speaking out in a town hall type of a Zoom call, I guess, where everybody is online and, don't want to speak out of turn most of the time, but requires a little bit of confidence? I don't know if anyone has any tips there. It's a hard one.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think it's a hard one. For me, it helps if the person who started the meeting and facilitates the meeting really looks at who's not speaking. I mean, if you see someone not speaking and the rest are speaking, maybe you can direct the question to that person. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing that we do a lot at Elastic is that if there is like 500 people in the meeting, we cannot speak. So we create a Google Docs beforehand, so people can put the questions in there, and then the people who are doing the actual Ask Me Anything session, or that we usually use for that, they can reply to these anonymous questions that are put in there. But yeah, town halls are difficult, especially for shy people, introverted people.
For sure. I think Teresa also has a great suggestion about setting up a Slido. But Uli, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that also studying a lot about the topic that you're going to present, the more prepared you are, like the more you know, the more comfortable you will be with presenting, with talking about that, and eventually answering questions. I never had the experience like to present to the whole company, but I've done presentations to a large group of people, and I remember that if you feel like that you own the whole, like the project, and you know everything about it, then it's a flowy process. Like if you know what you're talking about, then the more comfortable you will be with talking about it.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think also just like letting go of this high expectation that you have of yourself. So like when it comes to town hall meeting, you want to say something like brilliant, so you prepare, and like that expectation alone will like stop you from just speaking out. So just setting like smaller goals, like I will say one sentence like at a town hall meeting today, and that would be a victory for me. And just remembering that even if you say something like totally like out there, people won't remember. So like you don't have to put that much like pressure on yourself, because it's all going to be forgotten in like
super
10
true.
minutes. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that's a great segue. So we're almost out of time, unfortunately. I think we could have talked about this for another hour, I'm sure, or like 4. But unfortunately, we have only 2 minutes left. But I think that's a great segue into basically the way we want to wrap up is that a lot of the time, we think about things that are affecting us, and we think that people see them. But just like you said, Lisa, at these town halls, like everyone's probably thinking about themselves, right? They're like, oh, what am I going to say? And no one remembers. So that's a good thing. But as on the flip side, it's also important for all of us to also support each other. I think especially being underrepresented minorities in any situation, like if no one else is going to voice, it's important for someone to voice for us, even though, that's not necessarily the best way towards, we'll say, like equality and agency, but that's the toolbox we have right now. So I think that's another kind of point that we want everyone to take away from. So there's not only self-advocacy, there's advocacy for others, and not only doing that, but the acts of advocacy in and of themselves, but also trying to take actions to change the framework of advocacy, if you will, at the company, such as, like you were mentioning earlier, Phoebe, advocating for the parents, advocating for those who need to care, advocating for mental health, and so forth. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, we'll see you next time, hopefully, at our events.
Thanks to She Sharp.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.